they will act on it or start to like really absorb it and go for it. And that's why you will hear the same thing over and over and over again.
Which one of these insane policies?
Well, I woke up to, fortunately or unfortunately, my husband keeps very in touch with the news, and I hear about more than I want to hear, but all the time. And sometimes it's just like, I want peace, you know. But he said to me, he goes, did you read about what Kamala's going to do? And I'm like, no, I don't get into reading any of that. I try to give God my first in the morning. But it's, so Kamala said she's going to do an executive order, and within 100 or so days or whatever, the guns are going to be banned. They're coming after the guns. And I'm like,
well, she'll lose on that alone, I hope.
I would hope so. I mean, that is a violation of our constitutional rights, but
yeah, these executive orders, man, I'm gonna tell you what, they're dangerous.
Executive orders are not allowed to violate the Constitution either. So I don't think what would happen would be, if that were to come to pass, which I do not believe she's going to win. I'm not even sure she's going to be running.
I know.
That's just my thoughts. I kind of think she's like a placeholder. So we'll find out after the DNC if she's a placeholder and maybe somebody else is going to be shifted in somehow. I don't know. There's no telling what their strategy is. But a lot of it doesn't make any sense, and it's not even like, it's just not common sense. It's none of it. So
yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. Oh,
I think it's fascinating to me how I listened. We were listening to Ben Shapiro and another podcast when we were driving back from West Palm Beach to Orlando, and I was cracking up listening to the different news clips of how the media has shifted their narrative around Kamala Harris from she's the worst vice president, polls say she sucks, she's not doing the job she's supposed to be doing. I mean, like, even the left media was talking about this prior to Joe Biden backing down. And now they are completely changing everything that they say about her. And it just baffles me that people don't recognize that. The whole border czar thing being a huge part of that. There's video of Biden literally calling her the border czar. And now the media is like, she was never the border. The Republicans are making that up.
It becomes laughable, but it's like, you know, there's so many people, you know, thank you, President Trump, for calling out the media, that it is corrupt and it is what it is, and that our fight is with them also. But there's so many people out there now that are saving and recording everything.
I know.
And so I've seen videos where it goes through and it's like, oh, she was never the border czar, and it's got all this documentation and videos and of them, you know, talking about it. And it's like, really?
But I guess the part that is sad to me anyway is that even though we can say that all day long, we can continue to repeat that all day long because news is so fast. Like, Tyler points this out all the time. He's like, back in the day when you had to read the paper to get your news or watch once a day to get your news, maybe twice a day once that started, you weren't just constantly inundated with new information. So it's so easy to forget. Like, even listening to Ben Shapiro the other day, he was talking about something being in the news for 3 days. And he said, this is unprecedented. Nothing stays in the news for 3 days anymore because we move so fast. And so I can see why people are believing what they're hearing on the news, because they can't remember everything that they heard a year ago, 2 years ago.
No, it's true. And that's why I'm grateful for the people that are doing those things where they're saving. I mean, I know people that are saving like all kinds of stuff on their, external drives and,
Yeah.
to pull up and go, no. So I'm grateful for those people that are doing that kind of work. So,
Absolutely.
and exposing it because, yeah, I mean, it's true. It is going so fast.
But I also feel like that's part of
incredible.
the ploy, right? Like, how do you
Yeah.
how do you brainwash people? How do
Yeah.
you, this is
Yeah.
what you do. It's repetition, whether it's moving so fast or saying it over and over again, moving fast enough that they forget or saying it so many times that they remember. And that's what they've done. They've repeated everything they wanted you to know about Donald Trump for years, the same narrative. But anything about the Democratic Party that was negative or even positive, they move through that information so fast you can't remember.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of it is repetition, and we've all seen those videos where all the news stations are saying exactly the same thing because they do get their talking points. It's obvious they get their talking points. They all say the same thing, and all of the media is involved in that. All of it. If you're still watching Fox News, don't go there. You've got to find other sources. I know one that isn't, really mentioned as much and harder to find is OAN, One American News.
Yeah, I follow them
they're hard to find.
And
so if you could,
Newsmax is public now, so they're still
it's
conservative, but I'm not necessarily looking for conservative media. I want neutral media. I want media that's just going to tell me what's going on in the world and be factual about it instead of so much bias. Because
I agree with that. And I mean, it's interesting though, because and I don't know that there's a lot of sources out there. That Australian news network, sometimes they get off the rails liberal, but there's, and I know other countries sometimes will put out things also, but what is factual? What is factual? Yeah, I mean, what is factual? But it's like, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, the way that things are going, it seems that the conservative narrative is actually the factual one, or so it seems. And yes, I know that that's the arena that I stay in, but when you go and you listen, because my husband's like, well, I want to hear what they're saying on the other side, and I'm like, I really don't, because they're nasty. Some of them are just nasty. Just hateful, and I don't think that we need to be that way. But so I don't know, it's, you gotta pay attention. And I think it was the same thing. I pointed this out to somebody else while we were at TPUSA this weekend, that, in marketing, it's at least 7 times that you have to say something to somebody before they will act on it or start to like really absorb it and go for it. And that's why you will hear the same thing over and over and over again, because if you've heard it long enough, then you will act on it. And I saw that just personally, I saw that happen in a workspace. My husband and I used to work together, and this one gal kept bugging the manager's ear, saying all these things about my husband, about what he was doing, blah, 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 on and on and on. And she finally was starting to believe her.
Oh, wow.
And and this girl was conniving, and she was, but I said to the manager, I said, you have known him for a lot longer. Is that really, do you think that's true? And I said, maybe you need to investigate that before you start believing it once you talk to him. So, there's 2 sides to everything. But that she did that same thing with, if you hear it long enough, you start believing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's the same thing in your head. You tell yourself a lie long enough and it becomes a truth.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much going on right now. We're in such an unprecedented time in history. Who would have ever thought that we would be at this point 30 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, we really truly are in that battle of good and evil. We're right in the middle of it. And it's, if you haven't stood up, you need to start standing up and helping in this fight.
Yeah.
We need all Christians on board, all conservatives on board.
Yep. Yep. I've been one of those people who've remained very quiet, mostly on social media. I'm not afraid to share my thoughts. I just don't really talk about them on social media, but because that is the primary source of communication for most people today, we had a gentleman come by our booth who was the Florida chapter president for Blexit. Is that right? The guy with the wife in the wheelchair?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So he inspired me probably more than anybody else that we talked to this past weekend, for the simple fact that his own family has turned against him because of his Christian values and him stepping away from the Democratic Party. And his whole message, the thing that really resonated with me the whole time he was standing there talking to us was, you have to be loud. You have to stand your ground. You can't be afraid, because how do you ever reach somebody if you're silent? Silence is acceptance. Silence is affirming. Silence is giving in. And that's just been it's just really been sitting with me. And we met that guy, Sunday? Whatever day it was.
Might have been Sunday. It was Sunday, because I said to him, I said, are you guys speaking today? Because I really wanted to hear what they had to say. I wanted to understand their whole movement. And he's like, oh, we spoke last night. And I was like, oh. So I want to go out. I haven't found all the single videos for each of the speakers. I'm still looking for that. But if we find it, we'll tag it out here, because he was very inspiring. But yeah, they did speak Saturday night, and yeah, I think the message is really, and that's the way, I think that's what people need to understand. There are people turning away from the liberalness, and they might only come, and this is what I'm seeing, they may only come into, a non-party affiliation, and that's okay, right? Because maybe they can't make that full jump over to conservative or Republican, because it doesn't quite, but, they are walking away. We saw that, interestingly enough, with I think it was a 2016 election, there was an exit of LGBTQ people.
Oh yeah,
because of Brandon Straka, and he was like, I'm done. And he had this huge group on Facebook. Oh yeah. And I actually jumped into the group because I wanted to hear some of the things of what was being said and what they were doing. And he actually was jailed in J6 also.
That's right.
His group was also brought down, and he had so many people in that group.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just the different areas speaking out the truth of what's really going on, because the gaslighting.
Oh, it's so bad.
Real.
In fact,
it's so bad.
Made me think of something when you mentioned Facebook. If you go to Google right now, and I don't know if it's still happening right now, but 2 days ago it was happening. If you go to Google and do a search for Donald Trump, it comes up Donald Duck, Donald this, Donald that. You cannot get Google to put Donald Trump in the search. Same thing on Facebook. So Zuckerberg went on a talk show and said that he was not going to endorse publicly any candidates this year. He was going to stay quiet, but he thought that Donald Trump being shot at and living through it and an assassination attempt on him and then standing up and raising his fist saying, fight, 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 was the most badass thing he'd ever seen. And then he allows Meta to shadow ban anything. Like, you cannot look up Donald Trump on Facebook. On Meta.
Yeah.
It's probably the same on Instagram. So he's, you know, he can come out and say all day that he didn't have anything to do with it, but it's his company. He has to be responsible for it. And he is the one leading that company into these values and beliefs. So that in and of itself, the fact that you can't even do a search for the current running Republican presidential candidate who is a former president, that is a huge, that should be like something that would make a light bulb the size of Europe go off over your head, because why? Why are they so hell-bent on keeping any information about Trump out of the public eye? Why?
They don't want us to follow him, that's for sure.
Right.
I mean, I think they're very, very worried and very scared of him.
Of course they are.
He's not backing down.
And they should be.
He's not backing down. Yeah. I think he was told he shouldn't do any more big rallies. He shouldn't go outside, and he should only do small venues inside, which is where we saw him. We got the bonus of seeing him.
That was a bonus. He wasn't supposed to be.
That was a bonus. We didn't go to the event for that. We went to the event for Leigh Ann and her body butters. So I know, and it was amazing. But yeah, so we did get to see him, and that was really incredible. But he's also said he's going to do big venues. He's going to do rallies.
He actually was, I listened to, he did a rally in North Carolina right after the day after we saw him. And he said in that rally, they have told me, you know, people have talked about how subdued I am now and how I seem quieter and how I seem, you know, more easygoing or whatever. And I can't remember the word that he used, but he said people have suggested that I stay this way, whatever that word was. And he was like, oh, nice. They were saying how nice he is now. And he was like, I don't think I want to be nice. I think I want to be mean. Let's be mean. Or mean wasn't the word. But anyway, it was just basically, you know, going back to being the Donald Trump that all of us loved. Now, I was like, wow, he is so subdued at the RNC. When he walked out that first night at the RNC, he looked so somber, and he was a different man for sure. And through the RNC, he was a different man. But I think as he feels the support, because I think it's us that brings him alive, right? When he feels that support, he is just on fire. And yeah, he's a get her done kind of guy. I don't like his, you know, I don't like a lot of the stuff from his past, but I will say this. In his past, he was a registered Democrat. When he was a resident of New York, he supported the Democrats. He supported Republicans too. There's a lot of history of him donating to both parties, but he had a lot of Democrat friends and a lot of liberal people. But this was in the time when the Democrat Party wasn't so left. But when he decided to run for president, which if you go look, it's easy to find. There's an interview he did in 1989 where they asked him if he would ever run for president. And he said if he ever felt like the country needed him to, he would, but it wasn't something he was pursuing. He wants to run the country on a business front. Like, that's his thing. And I was thinking about this the other day on that drive back to Orlando. I remember as a kid, all I heard was how Republicans just wanted to go to war. You know, I remember the songs that came out about Reagan and having his finger on the button. And I remember that I can vividly remember the media talking about, you know, a Republican like Reagan being able to have his finger on the nuclear weapons because they were so afraid of a nuclear war during his presidency and how dangerous that was. And the same type of narrative is what they talk about with Trump. But here is why. It's because they're so strong and so dedicated to the protection of this country. There's no way someone would go into war with us. There's no way someone would want to fight with us because they know that these men are not going to back down. But look what happens when the weak administration is in office, the world catches on fire. Everywhere there is war right now, everywhere. And I don't agree with George Bush. I think both the Bushes were horrible rhino presidents that threw us into international wars that we had no business being in over money. I really believe that's what it was about. I do not believe it was over Hussein. I believe it was over money, because we did not go in to kill them. We went in to get oil, but that's neither here nor there. That's years ago. But that is the reason. That is the reason we don't go to war when presidents like Reagan and Trump are in office, because people fear them, and that's what makes us powerful.
Right. Yeah. No, we had a negotiator, we had a businessman, and that's, I mean, I thought way back in, you know, whatever, on beliefs, but when Ross Perot ran, he ran as a businessman. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's like running a big company, really, you know, and there needs to be efficiency. There needs, you know, they need to do audits and cut, you know, where we can cut. And because we have a huge amount of, crazy amount of debt.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so much money going out to other countries. It's like that didn't even need to happen. But yeah, I think having the businessman in place is, yeah. And interestingly enough too, is that before he came down that escalator, people loved him.
Yep.
People on both sides loved him.
Yep.
But as soon as he went down that escalator, and the one side went, he knows too much.
Exactly. And he does. He even said when he was doing his talk at the Turning Point event this past weekend that he knows people on both sides. A lot of them are probably never going to admit that they even still communicate with him, but he does know people on both sides of the fence. Well, I mean, the Clintons were at his wedding with Melania, for crying out loud.
That's what I was going to say too, is like one thing that I noticed, if I type President Trump in my text messages on an iPhone, that it will, if I type in president, I'll get the options of like Obama, Clinton, never Trump. I can't remember what the other one is. I think it was Biden. I think it was Biden, Clinton, and Obama will come up.
Imagine that.
I know. I don't know why.
Imagine that.
Oh yeah. And then it's crazy.
Yeah.
And even if I type in a capital T, it's not going to bring up Trump.
Yeah, right. Truman, probably.
There's that AI that's been manipulated. So yeah, there's all that programming. But yeah.
So in case you're wondering what we're talking about, if you're, you know, not really affiliated with news or events that happen around the country, I have a body butter company that is a Christian-based company, and I donate 10% of all of my sales to pro-life. And I'm not giving myself a plug. I'm telling you what happened this weekend, but I will give myself a plug. Anyway, I signed up for 2 events with Turning Point USA. One of them is the one that we just did in Florida, which was a breakout program. So Turning Point USA has 3 different companies. It's Turning Point USA, which is their political, I guess, or no, I'm sorry, that's their education part. That's how the company was founded. They go in colleges, they go into high schools, they set up groups and communities, and then they help educate people to unindoctrinate them. And then they have Turning Point Action, which is their political side, and that's the other conference that I signed up for is a Turning Point Action conference, and that's their great big huge America Fest conference that they do in Phoenix every year in December. So we'll be there for that one. But the one that we just did this past weekend was part of the Turning Point Faith, and this was their inauguration, if you will, believer summit. They've never done this summit before, and it was all Christians. I mean, it was all believers, but a lot of them were politically aligned too. There were tons of political groups that were exhibiting there. We got connected with several different groups that we didn't really know much about, which was amazing. But it was, you know, a lot of suppliers and all Christians. And it was amazing. We had people come by our booth and pray over us. And I went by other booths and people prayed over me. And it was such a phenomenal experience. And because it was in West Palm Beach, which I guess Sheri went to another event that they did there last year and saw Trump speak, because it's there and Charlie Kirk is friends with Donald Trump, Trump will make surprise appearances at these places. So he came this past weekend. We found out the day before we left to go to Florida. So we found out on Tuesday that he was speaking on Friday. And I was just a giddy little girl because I hadn't seen him live. So we found out on Tuesday that he was going to speak on Friday, but what we didn't know was that Ben Carson was going to open for him. And that man was amazing to watch speak. He's so funny. And I did not know his history. Like, he was a thug as a kid. I've not paid enough attention to him, I guess, but getting to see him speak live was such an amazing experience. So anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is because Turning Point USA, I really consider myself a partner with them now because I want to do events with them every year. They have such an amazing agenda. They are a secular company. They're not a 501c3, so they're a for-profit company, but they have such an amazing agenda of just getting the truth out there, whatever that looks like. And the Blexit group that we were talking about is part of their community. There was a group of Latinos there that were exiting the Democratic Party that was part of their community. In fact, I met this amazing girl who goes to the Calvary Church that my husband and I first became affiliated with when we joined the Calvary Association. And that's where she and I kind of connected because her pastor was the pastor I was listening to in Colorado, and he's in Leesburg, Virginia. And he was part of what brought me to the foot of the cross, where I became the repented Christian that I am today. And I am a post-abortive Christian, and I'm sharing that information with everybody today because it's something I've always carried in shame, and I don't carry in shame anymore. So that's kind of part of, I think, what Sheri and I are really trying to do with this podcast and trying to do with people that we meet now is, just share your story. There are so many people out there who have similar stories. You don't have to use names. You don't have to say, give explicit details, but at least share, because that's what we need in this world. We can tend to feel so alienated because the other side is so loud. They are so loud. But what happens if we become louder? What happens?
Right. Well, there's more of us than them. So if we become louder, then we will be really loud. And I don't think we have to be even that loud to be louder than them. And we don't have to be ugly like they are.
No.
We just speak the truth.
And make
That's
sure
all
that
we have to do.
God forward in everything we do and say, right? Like, we don't have to go and beat them with the stick, and we don't have to be unkind and trash them. We just need to be godly as best as we can.
We just speak out the truth. I mean, and that's what we saw a lot of this weekend also. I mean, when I first walked into the event to go try to find Leigh Ann's booth, I walked in, and I think we ended up everywhere until we got to your booth, so that wasn't bad. But when we first walked in, these kids came up and they were handing out different cards and things, and I read the card because in Florida it is a big deal about Amendment 4, and this is our abortion issue, because that's what it is, as far as being able to take in Florida, free and fair Florida, take abortion all the way up to birth. And that's what's on our ballot in November. And these little kids with their parents were handing out information, no on 4. And I was like, absolutely no on 4. So I was just like, that's what greeted me when I walked in. But we saw so many kids that were, ignited and out there, also doing and speaking. So it's just a very uplifting, refreshing event. Yeah, we went to TPUSA Action last year is what we went to.
Yeah.
And it was like in July last year.
Okay.
So it was very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would recommend everyone who listens find a way to get involved. Like we said at the beginning of this, there are so many causes, there are so many things to get involved in, but there are things that are really critical for the continuation of a republic country. You know, I mean, democracy is a word that continues to be used. And I spoke with a woman who is with a political activist podcast that on the day that we were there setting up, and she said, I'm so sick and tired of hearing the word democracy used, because we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And I haven't gone and done my own look up the definitions of the two, but I have heard that numerous times in the last 4 or 5 years since I started really diving into politics more. And it is true, we are not a democracy, we are a constitutional republic, which means that we have to operate under our constitution, not under a democratic council. So that is something that we need to remember too, because that's the left's current thing, is that Trump will kill democracy. But if you pay attention at what they just did with Kamala Harris becoming the presidential nominee, they made sure they got to the statute of limitations for having to have a runoff nomination, so that they could just plug her right in. And I'm curious to see if Sheri's theory is right and she's truly just a placeholder, but God knows who are they going to put in? That's the question.
Exactly.
Scary, because she's far, far, far left. So there's very, very little chance that she would become our next president because she's so far left. So who would they put in her place? That's the scariest thought to have. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're I don't know, a lot of people, especially I think women, are like, oh, I want to see a woman president. You know, I want the first woman president. And it's like, do your research. If you're sitting on that fence, please do your research, because as a prosecutor in California, she was jailing all kinds of black men. It's just, she's done so much. And now with, you know, outwardly saying that she's going to take the guns from everybody, whether you carry or not, that is your right. That is part of the Constitution. So, and honestly, I think, I mean, I had heard too that, you know, Japan never attacked our country because they said they didn't know, but that behind every blade of grass, there was somebody with a gun. So that's one of the reasons why we never got attacked in World War II. So think about it, you know, and you know, it's your choice as to whether you want to carry or not. And it's your choice because you have constitutional rights. So, but yeah, I don't know if she's the placeholder or not, but I just have that feeling that she is, and that she may not be the real deal. I don't know. I guess we'll find out in August. I would also be like, well, I contributed to Biden's party. I did not, but if I were on, you know, in the Democrat side, and I would be like, I contributed to Biden to run, and they just did a switcheroo on me, and they waited until after a certain date to bring her in. She didn't garner the votes to, you know, keep her, to have her be the nominee. And they're switching all the money that was contributed to Biden over to Kamala. I mean, I would be, if it were me, I would be like, I want my money back. You know, if you don't want, you know, didn't want her.
To do that is to have the vice president run for president. That's the only way. If they had pulled a different candidate in, they would have had to raise their own money, and all that money would have gone back to the donors. But because it's Kamala, that's why they were able to keep all that money.
Interesting. So again, I think we might have a placeholder.
We'll see.
I don't know.
We'll see. But I tell you what, if somebody does come in to run against Trump at the DNC and they announce a different vice presidential candidate, they're going to have to be so wealthy, because they're not going to be able to raise funds fast enough.
Oh, I think somehow they would probably write an executive order to do that. So it's like,
what a mess of a world we live in right now, or a country, I should say, but a world too.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, folks. It's going to be interesting.
It is.
Buckle up. Buckle up.
All I can suggest is that you pray and you pray and you pray and you pray some more, and then you become active. And I don't mean you need to go stand on the Capitol Hill, and I don't mean that you need to be screaming in everyone's face. Just, in some way, shape, or form, find what method works for you and pray. For me, I'm so pro-life that that's where I choose to jump in the fight. But, I try to keep some knowledge of the other issues going on, but pro-life is my issue. So
yeah, and you don't have to be outspoken on Facebook or any of the medias. Talk to one person.
Yeah,
have a conversation with somebody. That's could be in the grocery store, could be wherever. You'll probably be surprised how many people might have the same values.
Right. I wore
and are afraid to speak up.
I wore a pro-life shirt the other day and had people just tell me that they liked my shirt. You just never know. But I know some of the bigger cities, some of the more liberal cities, you kind of have to be a little more reserved in if you want to avoid violence. I did see where the older man who was praying outside the pregnancy center and was attacked, they nearly killed him. It's been a year since that happened, and they just arrested the guy that attacked him. So takes a while, but I do believe we have enough fighters in this country that eventually some of that will speed up.
Yeah, there's one of my friends has a well, there's two different people I'm thinking of, but she's got like a cowboy hat and it says Trump 2024 on the front of it, and she wears it all over the place, and people are like, it's like they're afraid to, some people are afraid to speak out, but she says I get way more compliments on it than not. Yeah. So think about that. I mean, there are a lot of people in the same conservative camp.
Well, and when they attempted to assassinate him, people in the really, really, really blue cities were even touting Trump merchandise in the cities, walking around. So, and they all live to tell the tale.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of us in the world, and I believe that we're growing in number.
Yeah, I think so too. I would just say find somewhere where you can, do something that aligns with you. We'll drop some things in the show notes of things that you can do, because I know we didn't talk about a lot of them, like My Faith Votes.
Yep.
Just writing cards and sending them to Christians that haven't been getting out to vote. We need all Christians on deck to vote. We really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we learned over the weekend that there are 40 million Christians in the country that we know of. 25 million of those Christians are registered Republicans and they don't vote. So if you are one of them watching this, please let go of your anti-government ideals, because if Kamala gets into this country, Islam will take over. I really believe that. I believe that we're at that breaking point. Either we go into a civil war again, or Islam will find a way to take over. They are literally inundating social media and sending hate mail. I saw the Patriot Barbie posted one the other day where someone in the Islamic faith sent an email to one of the congressmen and said, we will take over your country. You will pray to our God. So I understand that there are a lot of us, but if we're not strong enough to go vote, are we strong enough to fight against them? That's my question.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the evil has been allowed to infiltrate our country physically over the border. So we've got to do something to stop it.
Yeah. And I do believe that Trump is the one who can get in there and stop it. He's done it once, and I believe he'll do it again, and with even more vigor this time.
I think so too. And I think a lot of some of the evil has been removed. So
Yeah.
I think that he may have an easier go of it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be people speaking out, and there's always, there's two sides for everything.
Yep.
So
So my prayer for everyone watching this is that you have the armor of God on, and that you feel that armor, and that you feel the strength of God behind you and in front of you, and that you go out there and find a way to fight the good fight so that we are safe and that we can continue to prosper in this country. Because as my pastors say, God is going to step away from this country if we don't take it back. It's inevitable. And if Kamala gets into office, here's my final soapbox. If Kamala gets into office, we will become anti-Israel. If we turn our backs on Israel, the Bible clearly says in Ezekiel, all nations will turn against Israel. And that is when we will see the beginning of the real end, is when that war starts. And we're so close. We're so close to that war. And the only way we don't go there right now in our lifetime is if Trump gets back in office. I really believe that. I really do.
And I don't see a better solution to what's going on right now. Love him or hate him.
Yeah, it's not about his personality. It's about his policies. And that's the thing people have to get past. Yes, he's arrogant. Yes, he's cocky. Yes, he used to be a playboy. Yes, he's, all those things are not lies, but his policies saved this country.
They did the first time. And that's the only reason that we're still here.
Yeah.
Because just think about what Hillary might have done. And there would have been no more voting.
Yeah. And it'll be the same way with Kamala.
Yeah. We're sitting in socialism right now. Yep. Socialism and communism. It's hard to say where we are at, but we're right in there right now. And if you don't want to live in a communist country, then
nope.
Get in the fight, please.
Vote. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing you could do. Vote your values.
Vote your values. That's right. Okay, well, thanks so much for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed this podcast. We hope that you will share it with everyone, because it's we are just sitting in such a crucial time. So please share, and don't be afraid. Let go of your fear. Without fear, there is faith. Be in faith.
Yes. What have the angels always said? Do not fear.
That's right.
Fear. That's what they always say.
That's right. We love you, and thank you so much for watching this podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.